I'm presenting to you tonight as follow-up to the work-study meeting that we had last month, where the board and executive management team talked about what's our next step, what is our plan B. And there was, even though we don't make decisions in work-study meetings, there was a sense that I think we all felt like we wanted to move forward by reaching out to those organizations that had not submitted proposals to us, but had expressed interest. And I was charged with, at least informally, with reaching out to them and seeing what I could find out about what interest they may still have. So I'm reporting to you tonight on a couple of things. One is, I also took an opportunity to think about what our process should be going forward with this new approach. And you'll see that it's somewhat common to what we've seen before in terms of process on affiliation. And you'll see a couple little changes on that. And then also to provide you with information about what I'm hearing from these organizations and what my plan is going forward from here, so that you're all informed along the way. Hopefully I got So the first, or the next slide here shows the process plan that I've put together that starts moving us toward the last box in that screen, which is agreement execution with an affiliate partner. Right now, we're really in this box right here tonight. What we decided to do already was we already decided that we would move forward on a plan B. We'd identify potential affiliate partners and that I would make some initial contact. So tonight I'm going to talk about those organizations that are compatible with our goals and some evaluation that the executive team and I have done on them so that you can see a profile of those 5 organizations really matched up against one another. Going forward, developing a scope of the relationship with organizations that we would like to move forward with, that's really the major deal points that result in us being able to put together a couple of documents that's really overseen by the draft of a letter of intent that has behind it a term sheet as well as a very high-level preliminary budget for the district going forward and for the hospital and clinics going forward under affiliation. Once we get to that point and we're in a letter of intent relationship with another organization, then we start to come down again into due diligence. This is where we dive deeper into each other's organizations. We do the financial, operational evaluation. We also start to seek input, stakeholder input. And by stakeholders, I'm talking about members of the community, our bondholders, all need to have an opportunity to understand where we're headed and be able to offer us input there. And then, of course, a lot of work to be done on regulatory research and make sure that whatever deal we're creating is going to be compliant.
Can I interject something here?
Of course.
This is as far, we got through due diligence prior.
Well, we got into it.
Yeah, that's probably a better way. We couldn't get what we needed at due diligence.
Yeah.
So that's where we broke
started.
down. And that's probably the place where if you're going to break down, that's the best place to break down.
We didn't get to the previous step either, the development of a draft LOI, did we?
We did not.
No,
We did
no.
not.
No, we dropped right there in due diligence.
Yeah, because we were trying to do due diligence to do that, and it never happened.
Right.
So sometimes you can look at this phase right here, and sometimes you call that due diligence, and there's a bit of that in that.
Yeah.
Because in order to do that, in order to draft a preliminary budget, you do need to get some information about one another's organizations. When you get down into this phase of due diligence, that's where you're really getting into the guts of the organization. I mean, at this level, our affiliate partner is going to want to see every vendor agreement that we have. That's that kind. They'll want to see every physician contract that we have. It's that level of detail that you start to get into.
Is that reciprocal, that we want to see all of their?
Yes.
It goes both ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
We want to know what their financials look like. We want to know if they're able to be, if we make a good partnership. So that means looking at everything.
Yep.
Well,
I
I think
know.
Like a
that
marriage.
may have been where we had a problem last time, is they felt we were asking too much too soon. And I think if we were talking about an organization, let's just say as overlay, they won't want to share that at that stage. I wonder if the LOI shouldn't be moved past the due diligence stage.
One advantage of having the LOI here is that it also comes with an understanding of confidentiality.
Yeah.
Now, there is confidentiality that occurs throughout the process because we're in what's called a deliberative process. And the deliberative process means that all of the documentation that we're sharing with each other is confidential until we get to this date right here. And at that point, then everything is discoverable. But getting a letter of intent is really important because you don't get any organization who will let you start to get into the details of their organization until you've made at least that preliminary commitment to work exclusively with them. And that's why what we do at this stage is we say, well, let's talk about some of the high-level structure of what this thing looks like before we get to the letter of
Okay, and
intent.
a draft LOI would not be real detailed in financial issues or anything. It's just
No.
really a promise of confidentiality and a meeting of the minds and moving forward.
Right.
Is that correct?
I love what you said, meeting of the minds, because
Yeah.
this is where you get that, you start to get that meeting of the minds on the concepts. And is this a lease agreement? We're gonna pay you for some certain management services or pay a management service fee? It's that conceptual, discovery and development of, well, what does the deal mostly look like? Now, and then you say, okay, you know what, it looks like we've got some potential here. You do the letter of intent with some high-level terms, call it a term sheet, and then you say, all right, let's get into the guts of one
Yeah,
another.
and that stage is where you, like if you're buying a house, it's almost like you have to put down your earnest money to make sure that you are serious about
Great analysis.
that. That's really how you do it. And then there are other, in the due diligence, that's when you look at the, whether
The
you
heating
need that
systems.
inspections and all,
Yeah.
So that part there, that stage is the earnest money stage.
Like that analogy.
That's the way I look at it.
So if you
Yeah,
get through
before you
this,
sign, you have to
and
sign something.
everything's still
Yeah.
looking good, then
Earnest
what you're gonna do is
That's
translate
our
the
earnest
term
money.
sheet.
Yeah.
You're gonna translate the term sheet, and those are the deal provisions, into some specifics
There you go.
that make up your definitive
Right.
agreement.
And then
So
there's
the
your
definitive
closing.
agreement should look like just a much more detailed and legal document reflecting your LOI and your term sheet. And then once we get a definitive agreement done, and by the way, this regulatory research, I was gonna draw an arrow, but just know that kind of continues through here, to make sure that everything is compliant, because your definitive agreement gets put together and you're still working on compliance issues throughout. And then you start to work on, well, what does it really look like to integrate the organizations? You get an initial plan put together for how you want to start working together, and then you execute an agreement.
Yep.
Now, I will say this, in the research that I've done on how this process goes, these 2 points may flip. Just depends on how you do it. Integration planning sometimes comes after you sign an agreement. My bias is that at least you need to have a high-level conversation about integration planning long before you sign an agreement, just because you want to get started on that work. I think the organization should be putting their energy into this part of the process even before you sign the deal. So that's the process plan. Now you notice below there's a
So that it's interchangeable, you mean, those last two.
Those last two.
two stages.
And really, when you think about integration planning, it can start here, it will continue long after, and of course, implementation is much further down the road. Now you notice I put a box around this group here of steps, and that is consultation. I will be seeking consultation for accomplishing a lot of this work. I can't draft a definitive agreement. I'm going to need some specialized legal assistance. I can't conduct all of the due diligence. I'm going to want a CPA firm to help us doing that work. But the executive team and I are doing all we can up here to accomplish this work within our current budget with our existing salary. You know, we're paid to be here. We're accomplishing this work.
At
Okay.
what point is there a certificate of use?
Great question. It becomes, it's part of the research, and when I
Regulatory
said that
research.
line that goes along here, that's C of M is part of that line. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So what we did is developed an evaluation criteria for these 5 organizations based on the goals that we, the executive team and the board set together. The first one is brand. Brand is really the driver of this question that we asked. We need a brand that will increase patient loyalty, community awareness of our services, and grow outpatient service volumes. That's the most important thing that we get out of this deal. Next, we want to make sure that there's a geography between the organizations that support convenient flow of patients and referrals. We want to make sure there's financial, well, 2 things with the finances of the organization, that there's strength and also a willingness to use that strength to help the hospital and clinics to grow. Are they willing to make financial commitments? Do they have the stability to be able to assure that those commitments can be fulfilled? And then, are they the kind of organization that can create economies of scale? And it's kind of a no-brainer. We wouldn't be really talking to these organizations if they didn't have the size that allows us for those economies of scale. The next criteria is a commitment to invest. I mentioned that already, but we did list that independently. A commitment to community health. We've talked about that. We've heard about that. That was one of the things that was challenging for us with our first round with Astria was, how's that going to work? We want to feel that there's a commitment to that. Is there an alignment of the mission of the organization with the district and making sure that there, and this is an important word, and that is a balance. If you only focus on one of the values that make up the mission of the organization, then it may not be a good match for us. And the same is true for vision and strategy. For example, if the other organization only brings an orientation to viability and they don't think about quality, the relationships with area providers, with the community, and they don't have a growth mentality, then they're not lining up with us. Or what if there's an organization, they say, well, it's all about quality. That's great, but they don't have any sense of financial viability and being good stewards of resources.
In that regard, could you go back to make financial commitments and tell us what kind of financial commitments you're thinking?
Particularly a lease agreement. That's the most common financial commitment that I discussed with the 5 organizations. One of the things I also heard in my conversations, and I'm just going to jump ahead, one of the things that's not on this list that we believe was responsible for why we didn't get a lot of proposals is the ability of an organization to take our revenue bond debt and move it from our balance sheet to their balance sheet. Consistently across every organization I spoke with, that was a non-starter for them. That said, there are still ways that other organizations can make financial commitments to our organization, both in terms of a lease agreement and a commitment to help us grow. And so that was, and you'll see as I go through, that was part of the conversations I had with the organizations. Thank you. So moving on, what I'll do is I'll take one organization at a time and talk about my conversations with them, and then I've got a slide that will show everybody side by side. Evergreen Health. My contact there is Bob Malty, CEO of Evergreen. As we looked at how Evergreen compares with our criteria, we came up with a high, medium, low ranking for each of those. Brand, they're a very high quality brand, but their recognition within our market is not as high as some of the others that I spoke with. The geography is challenging in terms of patient flow. As in my conversation with Bob Multy, he talked about how patients actually have to drive past 2 other hospitals to get from our hospital to their hospital. Their financial strength, excellent. And I put up the bond ratings for these organizations, and you'll see on a subsequent slide some descriptions of bond ratings. But there are Moody's AA3, and they've been rated stable, and that rating was as late as 2015. I put an L in terms of, so the first part of these financials, or financial assessment, is strength is the one on the left, willingness on the right. And I wouldn't say it's not necessarily, willingness may be a strong word, but Evergreen has made a very strong commitment to their Monroe campus. And they're finding that they're having to invest significantly in some of the capital needs there in Monroe. And so I'm going to come back to the financial in just a minute, kind of with a sum up of the Evergreen situation. Commitment to invest in growth and scope of services, also a low because it's related to this and their ability to invest capital right now. Commitment to community health and wellness, they're excellent at that. Their mission and their vision, we, the executive team, believe that there's a really good connection with them, and they are a public hospital district. Now, just some notes about Evergreen. My latest, I actually had 2 calls with Bob Multy, both great interactions with him, but he said, we're just not able to consider this at this time for a couple of reasons. Number one is, I mentioned Monroe. Monroe is really occupying a lot of their energy right now. And I mentioned that they are making capital investments in that site that they had not expected to have to make, but he said, we're committed to our relationship with Monroe. In order for them to be successful long-term, we have to make these commitments, and we hadn't planned on them, so we're having to find a way to consume those within our existing budget. The other that Bob talked about a lot was the geography. He just didn't feel like it's conducive to patient flow. There really isn't a straight shot highway between us and them. And again, the fastest route between us and Evergreen passes 2 other hospitals. A couple other things in my conversation with Bob, as you probably know, Bob Multy has announced his retirement. And he will be leaving Evergreen at the end of the year. And that just poses another variable for us to be able to engage in.
How long has he been a CEO there?
Oh, that has been 10 years.
Oh, it's been 10 years. And for a long time, they didn't have a very good reputation.
Okay, 8 years.
8 years.
But, okay.
Yeah, he really turned that hospital around.
He's done a great job there.
They didn't have a very good.
The whole area has
before.
grown around there
Yeah.
too, which has helped a lot. A lot of new development.
Yeah.
One thing I will
So
say
he
though
did
is
turn it around. It's not a very.
he and I talked about the EHN relationship. We are a member of the clinically integrated network called EHN. We're one of 3 hospitals inside that network, the other 2 being Evergreen and Overlake. And he spoke highly of our relationship with them and Overlake in the EIN. And he said, Tom, if you think strategically about what you've already achieved within EHN and some of these geographic patient flow issues, he said, you should think seriously about Overlake being high on your list. And he didn't want to overcommit or over-endorse, but he did say that to me.
Well, if we talk Overlake, we're also talking Evergreen in the framework of the EHN.
And that's exactly what Bob said. Yeah.
I was talking to one of their constituents there, and he was telling me how upset they are because they're paying $10,000 in property taxes to the hospital. They don't know where the money's going. I was just listening to him. There are several of them that were very upset because that's how much they are paying for the hospital. $10,000, this is what he said, yeah. Oh, okay.
Okay, multi-care. And you may be interested, my contact at multi-care is Anna Loomis. Anna is the Chief Financial Officer at MultiCare.
What's her name?
Anna
Anna.
Loomis.
Loomis.
Loomis. Long history with MultiCare was at Good Samaritan for many years in the finance department. Brand, MultiCare has a great brand, but it's a localized brand. It's in the cities and the areas where they currently provide services, they're very well known. They're not as well known in our market. So they're a good brand, they're just not a known brand in our area. And if we're looking for brand to be able to create movement and recapture and help solve some of the out-migration problem, they come up lower on that assessment. Geography, again, they're not that nearby partner where patients would be able to flow back and forth. Very strong financially. They have their 2017 Moody's score AA3.
AA3.
Now, let me just explain. Negative means that they believe at some point they may drop from their AA3 score. That's really related to the fact, and I'll talk about more of this in a minute, that they've made a very strong commitment to an affiliation relationship with hospitals and clinics in Spokane, or the Rockwood Clinic organization. So that's occupying a lot of their energies. So their ability to commit to an investment of our scope of services low, but add to that the fact that they have just finished their build out of their Covington Hospital, and investment in our growth in terms of our scope of services would really constitute a duplication of the investments that they've already made on the east side. Mission and vision, really a very well-run, well-respected organization. I believe they have a high compatibility with us. So other considerations, I talked about Spokane being a lot of work for them right now, and Covington really constituting a duplication of efforts for MultiCare. Let's move on. Let's talk about Overlake. Overlake has a great brand. They're well known, of course, in the market that they serve, but they're also very well known here because a lot of people from this area seek and receive services from Overlake. The geography works well, and we've proven that with our stroke and our cardiac services program, where patients from our emergency department who require a higher level of care do go directly to Overlake.
Who's the CEO there?
I'm sorry,
Mike.
The CEO is Mike Marsh.
Mike Marsh, that's right.
Yeah, thank you, Brown. Their financial strength is high. They're a Moody's A2, and they were given a stable rating in 2017. They're also a high when it comes to a willingness to use that financial strength, and would be very likely to enter into a lease agreement with us. All of these organizations I spoke with right out of the gate absolutely would not be willing to put the debt on their balance sheet, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't be willing to enter into a lease agreement.
So what about their affiliation, say group health, if that's not?
They don't have that.
Yeah, they do. They work
do?
very closely with
Yeah,
Group
but
Health,
they're
and
not,
that is a very mature relationship. They've been working on that relationship for a long time, and that's going very
Kaiser
well.
Permanente.
That's
Yeah,
not
Kaiser
consuming
is
a
not
lot
Group
of
Health
effort
anymore.
right from them to make it work. It is working.
But we wouldn't be,
It's,
Kaiser would be
The relationship that they have with them is to serve group health patients, and that would be a conversation that we could have through the process. Was not as of yet part of the conversation that I've had. Okay, thank you. Their commitment to grow services. We know this because historically they have expressed interest in us being successful in growing our services. Mike has mentioned that in times past as well as present. Their community wellness programs are rich.
they have a lot
Very.
of flyers
oh
up.
boy.
Yeah.
And
Very
the
good
annual
at that.
events, it just,
Yeah.
it's out of this world sometimes.
And then, of course, we rated them high on mission and vision. And I mentioned Eastside Health Network is a really strong consideration. It becomes a strategically aligned relationship with respect to our existing activity in EHN.
Now, we did make an effort and Daryl was one of the negotiators. And so was Ryan Roberts, to have some kind of affiliation or merger with Overlake, and it was not successful.
Correct.
And
That
have
was
you
then,
identified
this is
the
now.
reason that that failed, and how could we avoid it the second time around?
Yeah, so, I talked, oh, Gerald, do you want to speak to that?
I think things are different now.
Yeah,
One
that
thing
was
is I don't know, our hospital wasn't built. And I think that's one thing that, and I think we had some personality challenges a little
Yeah.
bit too.
Different
I don't
players
know.
then.
Yes, okay.
There are different players.
I'm being affirmed, yeah. We had some personality conflicts too that just got in the way of getting very far.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did broach the topic with Mike Marsh and his request, and he was very affable and very kind. He said, Tom, let's put the past in the past, and let's start
Good.
with a fresh, clean slate
There you go.
and move forward from here. And I said,
That's a good idea.
We'll have to do
Yes.
that, yeah.
I'd love to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay, moving on from Overlake.
And that's nice that he has that attitude. He's
Yeah.
expressed it. That's really important.
It was, it felt good.
Yeah.
University of Washington Medicine, UW Medicine, great brand. How well, it's kind of a toss-up, but I put an H there because they are a very well-respected brand, and they probably are well-known here as well. The geography is a challenge. They are Seattle, and you'll see when we get to Virginia Mason, they both have the challenge of being in Seattle, but UW even more so, given that it's down and to the right versus just being, when I say down, it's I-90 and to the right versus Virginia Mason just down.
How do you include in that calculation the very substantial clinics they have on the east side, including Issaquah?
Yes, I have. And Issaquah, the Issaquah presence for both VM and UW are both very strong.
So that's why I'm concerned about the L rating, because there could be referrals out of their clinics up here. It's not just the UW Medical Center that we should be looking at, but also the clinic.
Great point. Great point. Make a note of that. Financial strength, they are a Moody's AAA. You don't get better than AAA. It's the best rank that Moody's gives. Their outlook was negative, but you can only go down from a AAA rating.
Is that looking at the entire market and saying healthcare market is going to go down and therefore it's negative or something like that?
It's actually looking at the entirety of the University of Washington.
Just the university?
Which includes all of their operations and hospital. Yeah, but they're a very strong organization financially. The L is related to their strategy though. And the strategy that they have for affiliation is their network strategy, which they characterize at, oh, by the way, at UW Medicine, I was working with Ruth Mahan, who's their chief business officer, Ruth Mahan. It's described as what she calls a capital lean approach. And that's a nice way of saying we're not really set up or ready to invest capital dollars in our network partners or our affiliate partners. So the commitment to grow our services, I gave a medium, which may be even a little higher than reality is given their capital lean approach. Their commitment to health and wellness, I think, is high, and they are working on building a statewide network. And mission, values, vision, and strategy, I gave a medium, and it's because they have, in their strategy to build their network, they brought in a company called RCCH. And RCCH stands for the two letters of each of two companies that came together. One was RC and the other one was CH, and it was Regional Care and Community Health. These are two for-profit organizations out of Tennessee that came together, and they're providing consultative as well as deal-making services to the University of Washington under an LLC that they have formed. So when they decide to bring in a network partner, they approach it with two organizations working with that new affiliate partner. One is the University of Washington, which brings all the quality processes, all the clinical processes, and the other is RCCH, which brings all of the leveraging for economies of scale, as well as driving efficiencies in those organizations. My concern is that RCCH may not be the kind of organization we really want to be working with long-term. My concerns were raised when I understood that they were for-profit.
Yeah.
And so that's why I gave those immediate scores.
Would that affect our nonprofit status?
It would not affect our status, but it would certainly affect the way that we would be expected to operate.
I'm really disappointed that they are so involved with that Tennessee outfit. I don't know what it is, but they've got these Tennessee for-profit management companies that are running a lot of hospital systems, including Astria.
There are a lot out there. Yes, there are a lot.
Yeah.
And I think
Was it, are they,
so
Tennessee must be,
it may be a great strategy for them, but
medical.
again, that's why I put medium on the mission.
I'm very disappointed.
Okay, let's move on to Virginia Mason. Virginia Mason has a great brand. It's very well known here. In fact, in this room are 3 former Virginia Mason employees. You may not know that. Dr. Wickup, Joan, and myself all have worked at Virginia Mason.
And who's the CEO there?
This, the CEO is
Gary Kaplan.
Gary, thank you.
Is who?
Gary
Gary
Kaplan.
Kaplan?
And I worked with Carrie Shannon, who is their Senior Vice President of Strategy and Business Development. In fact, Carrie first came into the Seattle market about a year and a half ago. Actually, no, 2 years ago, and she just started making the rounds. And I applaud her for doing that. She got out and she toured all the hospitals in the area, and she has actually toured our hospital.
I have a friend that's a health professional. Her husband is also a physician, and she swears by Virginia Mason. She just loves them.
Great brand. Great brand.
I get 90% of my health care.
The geography medium, it's a ways, but it is you get on I-90 and just keep going on to I-90.
I'm going to say something
bad.
that I
Yes.
found out at a meeting, and I think I talked to Tom about it, that Washington State employees, Virginia Mason has they did a whole lot of work to make the insurance payments, et cetera, better for Starbucks and Costco. One, they have the total control of Washington State employees. Washington State employees go to a specific hospital somewhere in the state, and the patient has free transportation, free housing for them and their families while they're there, and
So is that in Virginia Mason? Is that Virginia Mason that has that hospital? Or?
Yeah.
So their geography, again, a medium. Their financial strength, their Moody's rated Baa2 and stable. That was 2017 that they received that rating. It's a medium only because it's still what's called investment grade, but it's at the lower end of investment grade. And you'll see in a subsequent slide about the definitions on that rating.
Is that reflecting the recent merger of Yakima Valley Memorial Hospital, where they took over this 330-bed hospital? Has that affected that rating?
I can't say that because I didn't see the full report from Moody's. I just saw the rating. But it is absolutely consideration as part of my notes about what they're working on right now. And then in terms of willingness, they do have a lower financial profile than others, so that may affect their ability to make financial commitments. That was one of my concerns with Virginia Mason. And it related and carried over into the commitment to invest in growth. Their commitment to community wellness, excellent. Joan just gave a nice endorsement of that, thank you. And really, really strong on mission and values. Vision, this would be a medium. One of the things that was very clear in my conversations with them, and it comes back to the brand, is that they guard their brand very, very closely. That it means everything, and I think that's great. When I thought about the balance of that, and, you know, how they balance the brand with the driven by quality, and then where they are on viability and their Moody's rating, I thought, okay, maybe that's a medium rather than a high. That said, they do have a very active history of managing costs through their group purchasing organization. They were one of the major subgroups under Amerinet, which is a large national group purchasing organization, and they continue to do that. Amerinet has changed its name to Intellear, and they are still a very active and driving force for reducing supply costs for hospitals, all hospitals within their subgroup, and so I applaud them for that. I also should have put on here, and I just didn't include the bullet point, they mentioned to me that their physical operations are going very well for them, and so that would make for a good connection with us and may actually drive this M to an H.
That place is amazing down there in Esquire. It's like entering a major medical center, even though it's very compact.
Yeah.
I mean, they got everything there, you know?
Yep. So you'll see on the next slide, here are the comparisons, if you want to look at them side by side. And this is also an opportunity where I had room to show you the Moody's grades. A3 is an investment grade. They're all investment grade, high, upper medium, and lower medium. But really, all the organizations that I talk to are investment grade rated organizations. So when you come back to the conversation we had about due diligence, these rating agencies do pretty much a due diligence look at these organizations, and they say, you know what? These are good credit risks for the investors who want to buy their bonds. So if you just kind of line them up, and we talked about all the other considerations, this is the conclusion.
I saw a vendor model there. What does that mean?
Vendor model was, the vendor model that was mentioned from Virginia Mason is an alternative that was discussed that I talked with them about, and that was if they lend our brand, that we would make a payment every month under a management services agreement.
If they lend us
their brand, right?
Essentially buying it.
Right.
Or
Which is
buying
not
those.
really an affiliation relationship as much as it is work that you would be doing with any organization who would bring in consultative services. So they'd be willing to be a consultant to us, but that they just put it out there as another option. So that
That's
was
not the only thing they'd be interested in.
correct. I just applaud them for being creative.
Okay.
Tom,
They
remind,
just got another award too for being outstanding, what was it? Green Hospital or
Oh,
something,
did they?
sustainable hospital,
Okay.
one of the top ones in the country. They're always getting new awards.
remind me again, did Astria, did we go to, with the same thing with the Moody's rating with Astria?
They're non-rated,
They're non-rated, okay.
right? Like us. Frankly, yeah. And so I concluded from this that there are two organizations that I'm going to continue to talk with because, you know, they bring a brand and I believe a willingness to enter into a relationship with us that would be meaningful
Yeah.
in terms of truly integrating with them and being able to do what we really need brand to do, and that is move market share and recapture And so I'll continue our my discussions with Overlake and Virginia Mason.
Yeah.
And let the others know. Thank you. Now Evergreen, Bob said thank you, but we just can't do it right now. And he was very gracious about it. And so that kind of made the decision a lot easier on that one.
Does that adversely affect the Eastside Health Network idea?
Not at all. Eastside Health Network just keeps moving
Even though
forward.
Evergreen wouldn't maybe necessarily be an active part of that, or
Oh,
it's
no,
going through changes?
Evergreen is still all in on Eastside Health Network. They just can't add it, they just right now can't add another integrated hospital into their hospital operations.
I noticed they're
They would be willing to see us be integrated into Eastside Health Network, which we are already partially integrated now.
They actually, a step further, they would be willing and supportive of us integrating with the other partner, the other hospital organization, Overlake, within Eastside Health Network.
Very important.
Of the 5, Evergreen, Moody's report was 2015.
Yes.
They didn't have the most recent one.
No, and so when you sell bonds in the bond market, you will receive a rating from the rating agencies,
Yeah.
whether that's Fitch or S&P or Moody's. I did Moody's because I could get Moody's for everybody.
Right.
And what happens is you get that score at the time that you sell bonds, and then those rating agencies may at some point see some fundamental changes in your organization. They may come back and re-rate you, but it's not periodic and it's
I
not
see.
guaranteed that they'll do it. They do it when they think that it's time to do a
Okay, so
re-rate.
they're-
So it could go several years.
Oh, absolutely.
so-
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
carry that rating for a long time
Yeah.
if they don't think
There's no
anything's
reason.
really changing.
Yeah.
So just back to where we are, I grade this part out, since that's behind us, we're here, and my plan now is to continue with our 2 organizations that we identified as ones that really fit the goals that we established for affiliation, and see if we can get some alignment with them around the scope of what a relationship would look like,
And,
and I'll bring that back to you.
Yeah.
Next.
In your contacts with these, especially these 2 organizations, were these telephone contacts or in person?
They were a combination of both. So I had a phone call and a face-to-face with Mike Marsh, and I had 3 phone calls with Bob Multi.
And what about Virginia Mason?
Virginia Mason was a face-to-face.
Good. In talking with them, very important factor, what was your gut feeling about their incentive to do something with us?
Every one of them, my gut feeling was very positive. And I think that even with Evergreen, if there weren't other distractions, that we would still be viewed as an advantage or as very positive part of their organization.
Did you have somebody with you?
I did not.
Face to face?
I did not. With this initial round, I have not done that.
Okay.
That's
Well,
good.
I'm just real interested in.
It's okay, I think that's good that you, really smart. really smart approach.
Virginia Mason, because this was really our first contact in this regard with Virginia Mason.
From us,
From us,
personally, really. Yeah, went very well.
Yeah,
That's great. Thank you.
another extra funding for it.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's the update on affiliation, and I'll keep you informed as I work on the next box.
Could you give us an idea of future contacts, how soon they're going to occur, and how long the process is taking?
That is the one thing I couldn't put, I tried to put that on there, and I thought, I can't put it up there quite yet, because I want to go through this next round of
Yeah.
conversations with the 2 and try to put some dates on it, but at this point, I just couldn't get dates firm in my mind. because
We'll eventually get
There's a
there.
bit of unknown still there for us, Commissioner Pollard. Thank you.